Hey guys, welcome back. This is Nathara of the Gathering Crows podcast, and I guess the first thing that I want to talk about today is that yes, the Educated Witch podcast has had a name change. I decided to do this because I wanted to bring it more in line with who I am, what I'm doing, and the rest of the projects that I have going on. The name Gathering Crows amuses me a lot. If you've done any real study on crows and kind of the association, not just with their habits, but also with the myths, lores, and folktales that go around it, you can see why this kind of name might just amuse the shit out of me. So there's the name change for you. If we want to talk more about it later, we can absolutely do that. But today I want to talk about a YouTube video I saw last night, and I've talked about this issue here and there in a lot of other places, and I think probably most recently on my YouTube channel, but it's one of those things that drives me right up the wall. And there's a lot of these things. But the issue is real witches versus fake witches. Sometimes people call it plastic witches or insta witches, right? This idea that there is a real, genuine, purified, authentic form of witch, and then there's people who are posers or pretenders or fakers or doing it for cred, or who think that they're witches and they're deluding themselves because they're just messing it all up and playing some Harry Potter game. And this idea isn't coming from the mainstream, it's coming from within the community, like the call is coming from inside the house. So this isn't people in the mainstream being like, haha, you watch The Craft, now you think you're a witch, that's so funny. It's people in the community who are looking at each other and being like, real, fake, poser, wannabe, fake, real. And that is an issue. And so we're going to talk about that today. Now, the YouTube video that I watched is from a very popular YouTuber, and I'm not going to call her out by name, but I'm going to just give some generosity here and a little bit of understanding in that she did say that the purpose of her video was to help verify people out there who are watching and that their witchiness was real, and it was not intended to disclude people, and that it was not a definitive list. It was only based on her experiences. And so this was to know the difference between a real witch and a cartoon or TV witch, in case anyone was confused where they fell. So I'm already having issues because I'm not sure who out there is worried that they might be a movie witch instead of a real witch, but I'm going to assume that the intent was genuine and heartfelt, like there was some compassionate part in there, but I don't understand it, and so maybe that not understanding it part is on me. So we're just going to go with that premise for now. But my basic issue with the whole idea of having real and fake witches is this fundamental judgmental place that we're coming from. But it's this idea that there is one true way, or maybe there's half a dozen true ways, but there are definitely some methods of practice that are not valid. And that's the real issue here. It's the idea that we can take a genuine testimony of what someone is doing. We can look at their experiences and be like, no, that doesn't count. What you're doing is fake. It's disingenuous. There are no effects. You're accomplishing nothing. There's no connection. There's no energy. You're doing nothing. And that is weird, for one, and it is judgmental, and it is very selfish and pretty ignorant, to be honest. The way I look at it, to be a real witch, all you have to do is say, I'm a witch, and that's it. I'm good to go. To be a fake witch, you would have to say, I'm faking it. This is all just a lie. It's a charade. I think it's fun. I'm goofing off, but I'm totally and completely insincere. That's the only way you're going to get me to think that you're a fake witch. And that, your experiences are your own. There is no rule. There is no rhyme. There is no definition of witchcraft out there. Like, you can look it up in the dictionary and there's a fucking definition, right? But when you get into the community and you start asking people about witchcraft, and how that works, it's gonna start getting fuzzy. When you get down to it, people are gonna say stuff like, well, witchcraft is anyone who uses any kind of spell. And then you ask, okay, well, what's a spell? What qualifies as a spell? And you're gonna get all sorts of answers, but they're not going to be universal. People are going to say, well, a spell is anything that you do that affects the movement of energy. A spell is anything that you do that affects reality. A spell is anything that you do that in a non-practical mainstream way brings about a change you want in the world. Or people are going to get real formal about it. They're going to say that a spell requires a ritual, it requires gods, it requires spell components, it requires some kind of chanting. There's going to be some variety of answers there. Some people are going to say that prayers are spells, and some people are going to say that no, prayers and spells are two different things and you can't cross them. Some people are going to say that charms are spells, and some people are going to say that they're not. Some people are going to say that devotionals, rituals intended to connect with the gods and goddesses or show them appreciation are spells, and some people are going to say that they're not. So there's a lot of contention about what a spell is. And there's a lot of contention about whether or not spells are necessary in order to make a witch. And there's a lot of contention about what is energy and what isn't energy, and whether or not energy and using energy qualify something as a spell. So when you get down into the nuance and the nitty-gritty, there's a lot of disagreement about what a witch is. We don't even agree whether or not a witch has to be pagan. There's a huge argument in the community about whether or not a witch can be Christian, about whether or not a witch can be atheist, about whether or not a witch can be agnostic, about whether or not a witch even has to have an opinion about philosophy or religion or spirituality at all. And that's part of the beauty of witchcraft, right? Like, it is this kind of nebulous thing that is whatever it is you want to call it. So I might look at the world, and some people might not appreciate this about me, but I can look at the world and I can see various traditions. I can look at bruja or brujeria, and I can call that witchcraft. I can look at voodoo, and I can call that witchcraft. I can look at hoodoo and call that witchcraft. I can look at Appalachian folk magic and call that witchcraft. But then I can get a little bit more exotic, right? And I can look at shamanism, like South American shamanism, African shamanism, Native American shamanism, Norse shamanism, and I can call all that witchcraft too, right? Because it meets these qualifications of having rituals and working with energies and, doing all these other things. And by some of those definitions, I can look at Catholicism and call that witchcraft. I can look at Buddhism and call that witchcraft. I can look at Shinto and call that witchcraft, right? So the definitions we have of witchcraft are really, really broad and somewhat vague, and they vary from practitioner to practitioner. And the fact that there's no agreement in the community about exactly what makes a witch, and what exactly qualifies as witchcraft, and what exactly qualifies as magic, and what exactly qualifies as a spell, is part of the beauty of our community. The fact that we have a community that can be so inclusive and so diverse and so very different and wild and flavorful. I want to go with flavorful here. The fact that we can all have these wildly different ideas and practices and approaches to life, and the beauty of what we do is an amazing and wonderful thing. And trying to force those wedges, trying to codify things and saying, this is how we do it and this is not, these things are valid and okay, and those people are heretics, that is not okay. And that should be alarming in our community. Especially since, and this may not be true anymore, but especially since when I was getting into the community, most of the people who were witches or who were pagans were almost like refugees from the Christian dogmatic society, and they themselves had been prosecuted for being not right and not acceptable in those communities. And so that we would turn around and be like, oh, we're only going to have this pure form of witchcraft as defined by author so-and-so and high mucky muck whatever. And if you don't meet these qualifications, then you're gonna have to find another word because you're not one of us. Or whatever other nonsense bullshit is not okay. And so we need to recognize the immense diversity that is witchcraft and realize that there's nothing we can do except ask if someone's a witch and respect their answer. You can't look at their Twitter feed. You can't look at their Instagram feed. You can't talk to their bestie and ask them what it is that they do, what it is they truly believe, what it is that their intentions are, and get a true, unfiltered, inside view of what it is they're doing. You can only ask that person directly, and that's the only way you're going to be able to tell if they're a real witch or not is simply by asking, are you a real witch? And then you have to assume they're not lying. And there's no way you would just absolutely know if they were lying or not. So yeah, you just have to ask and go with their answer. And that's okay. I'm sure we're going to have people who are lying and making up. They're going to say, yeah, I'm absolutely a witch. And then like go home and do whatever it is they do instead. And I don't know why people would lie about that, honestly, but I know people are liars and that's a thing that happens. So it's going to happen. And what harm is there in that? There's this weird, crazy idea that people are going to want to fake being a witch for some reason, and I'm not sure why people think that. Being a witch isn't profitable, neither by money nor reputation. And so faking being a witch, I don't know why anyone would want to do that. Been a pagan witch for a very long time. It has gotten me a whole lot of prosecution and not a whole lot of money or rep, so maybe I'm just really doing it wrong, and maybe I like missed the right sweet spot for age and influencerdom on Instagram. Maybe that's like a super popular thing or whatever that I'm totally missing the boat on, but like whatever, man. I know that like being an Instagram influencer is a shockingly large amount of work and it takes a lot of dedication and it's like a full-time career. And so if someone wants to dedicate their influencer career to pretending to be a witch, then they're not like slacking off. They're working really hard and I guess I'm okay with it. I mean, it's a lot of work to pretend to be something that you're not, and like live an Instagram influencer life is a hard ass career to begin with. So I'm not sure why someone would want to do both of those things at the same time and make things really, really hard on themselves, but like, okay. It very much feels to me like all those people in the gamer community accusing girls of being fake gamer girls because, I don't know, being a fake gamer girl is so incredibly amazing and gets you so much cool stuff, because all being a gamer girl really gets you is a bunch of guys accusing you of being a fake gamer girl. So not a lot of advantage in faking that one out. So I don't know why a whole bunch of people would want to be like fake witches. That's super weird. And I know that being in the witchcraft community can feel like it's super huge and super everywhere, and it's a big community. Like, the world is a big place, but in comparison with other communities, we're really, really tiny. When things happen in the world, they happen in our community last. The whole rest of the world can have all these different scandals happening in their communities, and we uncover ours last because we have a tiny ass, very insular community, and we're not friendly to other people. So the idea that anyone would want to pretend to be a community member because there's some kind of weird advantage to it is narcissistic, I guess. There's a lot of ego involved. Like, we need to recognize that we're a small community and people are just kind of accepting a certain amount of hate by volunteering to be part of our community that they don't really need. And part of that hate is a whole bunch of people talking down to you, accusing you of being fake, judging everything that you do, and it's kind of a pain. And just carrying around and promoting the idea that there is such a thing as fake witches and real witches, and that we're judging people on it, creates a weird divisiveness. And I know the pagan and witchy community is pretty divisive. We're not an inclusive community. We don't like to play with others. Most of the people in the community are very egotistical. We think we know what's right, and I'm saying we here. We think we know what's right. We think we know more than everybody else. We think we've got a direct line to the gods, and everybody else is doing at least one thing wrong where we've got the right thing. Our experience matters. Our experience counts, and nobody is listening to us as much as they should. And we will divide communities up so we can each gather our own personal cadre of followers, because we're all out to get followers. There are the lone wolves out there. You guys know all never really means all. There are the lone wolves out there. There are the caretakers. There are the people who just want to get along and have some friends and a nice community. But the communities tend to sprout up and become divisive the way they are because everybody's looking for their own spotlight to shine in. Maybe they want to be that mother hen of their friend group. Maybe they want to be the super nurturer of the friend group. Maybe they want to be that person in their friend group who is the super healer empath who takes care of everybody. And yeah, maybe that other friend has the spotlight all the time and gets all the credit for knowing all the things and has all the followers. But when she's in crisis, she comes to you instead. And that makes you feel super valuable. And that's where your ego gets the hit from. And nobody else can see people's emotions the way you do, and nobody else can care for people the way you do, and you're so special because you never talk about yourself or whatever. Like, we all have this ego trip, right? And so we work so hard to create these little tiny insular communities, which can be kind of fun because when you get to talking to anyone new in the community that you haven't talked about before, when you find that new person, you also end up uncovering a whole new part of the community that you didn't know about before. And they have their own people that are super famous that everybody knows that you've never heard of, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in the community. I am still discovering people after being in the community for, 25, 30 years that I've never heard of, that other people are like, oh my god, so-and-so is so famous. And I'm like, so famous, I have never ever heard of them. That's incredible. But your particular community considers that person so super famous, and I have just discovered your section of the pagan world. That is awesome. But part of the reason that happens is because we create these absolute bubbles in our pagan community, and this divisiveness is part of why that happens. We do the us and them thing so hard, and this real witch versus plastic witch thing, this real witch versus fake witch thing is part of that, and we need to stop. Me saying this on the podcast isn't going to cause that to stop, but maybe some of you out there will start thinking about this. So no, every time you see that list that's like, to be a real witch, you have to be an empath. To be a real witch, you have to be into divination. To be a real witch, you must feel a special connection to the moon. To be a real witch, you must have some knowledge of your past lives, or at least know that you had them. To be a real witch, you must have some compulsion to study history, especially in a particular region. Man, that's all bullshit. To be a real witch, you just have to be a witch. None of these things are true for every witch out there. I know someone who breaks every single rule anyone's ever written, and like half the time it's me. So no, we don't need to worry about who's a real witch and who's a fake witch. You just need to worry about who you can connect with, who inspires you, who makes you feel good, and who makes you feel bad. Who makes you feel bad about the people around you? Who makes you worry about who's out to get you? Who makes the world a darker place? And this particular YouTuber that I'm talking about, like, it's painful for me to be this frustrated because usually her content is very loving and reassuring, but to see, and I know her intent is not to be divisive like this, but just to throw down the idea that some witches out there are real and some are not, and that we need some kind of checklist or reassurance or something to prove that we're not a cartoon witch is so oof. Maybe what she was intending to do was to be like, hey, let's celebrate some experiences that make us cool witches. And by cool, I mean people who are having fun being witches. People who are celebrating their witchy natures. And like, that would be a fun ass video to do, right? Like, let's take some aspects of common witchy experiences and appreciate the hell out of them. That would be a much cooler video than implying some witches are real and some witches are fake. Maybe she was just trying to work that algorithm, because we know the YouTube algorithm is a temperamental beast and moody as all fuck. Maybe that was part of the deal there. But I'd really like to see something a little healthier from the community, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. I don't want to see any more of this real witch, fake witch stuff. I don't want to see any more of the real witch, plastic witch stuff. You can, like, if you want to be like this amazing Instagrammer with all the aesthetics and everything's beautiful and showing off your alt, like, this is, people complain about this stuff, but if you want to show off your altars and show off your spells and do all the things and you don't see any problem with that in your witchcraft, that is fine. I love following those accounts. I think what they do is absolutely beautiful, and I love that you're sharing your craft with your world. And those Instagrammers are often accused of just being plastic witches, and that is not a cool thing. They do beautiful work. They do absolute inspiration, and I cannot make any comment on their practice because their practice is theirs and they're the only one who's really familiar with it. And I wish we could respect people more. And that's what this podcast is about. Like, let's just respect people for their experiences. We already do that so much with people in this community when they talk about their experiences with their gods or with the spirits or in their divinations or whatever like that. So the fact that we question this aspect of like whether or not someone's a witch seems really weird and inconsistent to me. That's it. That's basically what I want to say on the topic of being a real witch versus a fake witch or a plastic witch. Like, let's just be inclusive about it. There's no solid definition for witchcraft. You can't issue a history test. You can't give someone a knowledge quiz. You can't attack their lineage. Like, we don't require any of those things in witchcraft. So there's nothing you can do to verify whether or not someone's a witch from outside their personal experience. That person's the only one who can tell you. And let's just respect that. You can definitely be like, I don't like their witchcraft. I don't like their person. I think they're doing things wrong. You can say, I think they're a shitty witch. But you can't objectively say they are not a witch, because there's no real objective definition for how that works. So that's it. That's what I have to say, and that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to stop my ranting and rambling. Thank you so much for joining me on Gathering Crows. Welcome to the new podcast. I will be revamping everything up, and if you want to support this, I would appreciate it. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you found it. Join me on the Patreon and stay tuned for more episodes. If you have something to say, drop it in the comments or shoot me a message on Twitter or at my website, CrowSongLodge.com, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.